The purpose of this press conference is to share these resolutions with you, to share the concerns and the aspiration of the Arab people regarding the issue of democracy. And since Washington didn't care to invite Democrats from the Arab world to participate in the conference, Democrats from the Arab world came here to address the American public and our neighbors at the White House just a few blocks from here to make sure that the Arab people, the Arab world, is not forgotten. So we will essentially begin as the order shows on the list of speakers, with someone who does not need an introduction at all to an audience like yourselves, who are quite familiar with the issue of democracy and lack thereof in the Arab world. Dr. Moncef Marzouki was the first democratically elected president of Tunisia after the January 14th revolution in 2011, which was a very important historic moment in the Arab world. And that change that took place in Tunisia did herald multiple popular revolutions throughout the Arab world and was the spark for this aspiration on the part of most Arabs in the Arab world to express their yearning for democracy. Elected to the presidency by the Tunisian National Constituent Assembly, President Marzouki is Tunisia's first president in modern history to arrive at his position through fair and transparent elections. As you all know, Dr. Marzouki is a doctor of medicine, a human rights activist, and author of more than 20 works on political philosophy in the Arab world and Arab politics, the founder of the center-left Congress Party for the Republic, the CPR, which was one of the parties that formed the governmental coalition from November 2011 to February 2014. In 2015, Dr. Marzouki founded the Movement for Popular Citizenship, Hirak al-Sha'b al-Muwatanin, a civil movement seeking to encourage active citizen participation amongst all Tunisians, particularly those marginalized under previous regimes. Unfortunately, things did not go as well as expected by Dr. Marzouki or most of us, particularly in Tunisia, since then, and that's why we are very anxious to welcome him at this moment to say a few words to you and to set things in perspective for us. Please, Dr. Marzouki.
Thank you, Dr. Khalil. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today's press conference is on the occasion of the Democracy Summit called by President Joe Biden. In the complete absence of an overwhelming majority of our states and of the genuine representative organization of the democratic forces of our country, as with almost a billion, half billion Arabs were not concerned. We, the Arab Democrats, gathered on December the 3rd, discussed the status of democracy in our countries and what position we agree upon. We have summarized this position in the statement that will be distributed to you. But allow me to focus on the following points that are our main message to the world democratic community and to the summit itself. First, of course, we value President Joe Biden's effort to defend democracy in the world. We wish the summit every success. We do agree with President Joe Biden when he said that, I quote, "Democracy doesn't happen by accident. We have to defend it, fight for it, strengthen it, renew it." However, what we want to focus on is that the imposition and defense of democratic order must remain purely internal mission that we alone are able to accomplish. External intervention can be completely counterproductive. Iraq is the best or the worst example. All that we call upon Western countries in general and the United States in particular is to stop supporting authoritarian regimes who prevent our peoples from exercising their minimum right to democracy and not to be silent on the action of states allies to them, mainly the United Arab Emirates, which has fought and continues to fight to destroy all Arab democratic revolutions. Such a policy of circumstantial interests strikes the very credibility of Western discourse on democracy. More seriously, with its support for countries like Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, or Saudi Arabia, it promotes the spread of the model of governance that blends liberalism and dictatorship, a model that today rivals strongly the democratic model that mixes political freedoms and economic growth to serve all. If this model spreads ironically with the support of Western democratic systems that have sacrificed their values and long-term interests for short-term interests, democracy can decline even in the oldest democratic countries. We admirably witnessed the ability of American democracy on January 2020 to counter anti-democratic forces, but we have seen how such democracy could be threatened even in its oldest stronghold. Second, the absence of 21 Arab states from the existing 22 does not reflect the true state of democracy in the Arab world. Since the independence of our countries in the middle of the last century, our people never stopped their fight for political freedoms and social justice. The peaceful and democratic revolution called Arab Spring, which began in Tunisia in 2011 and extended rapidly to Egypt, Libya, Syria, and Yemen, was the most important stage in this ongoing struggle. In spite of all the crimes of counter-revolution that have confronted this project, including civil war, foreign aggression, the recruitment of militia in Syria, Libya, and Yemen, the military coup in Egypt, and all the means of sabotage in Tunisia, the second wave of this Arab Spring was launched in 2019 from Algeria to include Sudan, Iraq, and Lebanon. We are confident that there will be a third wave. Probably launched from Tunisia to respond to the coup d'etat of 25 July, which abolished the constitution and frozen parliament and the democratic institution brought about by the Jasmine Revolution, perhaps from another country. But surely the waves of the Arab Spring continue in the years, maybe in the decades to come, until our people achieve their objective of being free peoples governed by democratic states. Third, the Arab people paid and are still paying heavy price for their struggle for democracy. Tens of thousands of people have been killed or injured in Yemen, Libya, and Syria. Millions have been displaced. Many of them are starving in Yemen or in camps in Lebanon. Thousands of political prisoners are jailed in our country without any right to a fair trial, like Dr. Salman al-Ouda in Saudi Arabia, or Tunisian MP like Saifuddin Makhlouf or Nidal Saudi. Let's not forget the human tragedy of 2 million Palestinians who have been under siege for more than 10 years in Gaza. In addition, there is also the issue of hundreds of executions in countries, mainly in Egypt, Syria, and Saudi Arabia. However, the displaced person and prisoner are not victims who must be sympathized with, but fighters for freedom, whom all country and democratic civil society must support with all available means. Why? Because they stand for our common values, because they are fighting for democracy, because their victory will be your victory, our victory, to all of us. We therefore have the right to call upon democratic state to receive the displaced persons well and to provide relief to those trapped in the camps pending their return to their homes. We ask them to put the pressure on our authoritarian regime to release political prisoners and stop execution, not only in search of justice, but also to prevent the worsening of political instability that would lead to civil wars, more terrorism, and more waves of displacement that no country will be able to contain. Fourth, last but not least, our virtual conference on December 3rd was the first step in preparing the ground for a general conference on Arab democracy to be held at the earliest. We will seek to bring together political parties, civil societies, organizations, and prominent figures in order to create a democratic Arab network whose task is to exchange experiences and work together to achieve our two final goals: building democratic states on the ruins of authoritarian states and building an Arab Union of independent countries and free peoples similar to the one built by the European peoples after they have eliminated communist, fascist, and Nazi dictatorships. In conclusion, we are proud of all what our peoples are doing to enforce their right to freedom. We are confident that our region, absent from this summit, is the one that is experiencing today the most important battle to impose democracy. And we do hope that sooner or later, 22 Arab states will join the club of free peoples and democratic states. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marzouki, and I hope that the wisdom of your words will echo down the street on Thursday and Friday, if indeed they are interested in the sentiments of the Arab world as you accurately described today here in Washington. Our next speaker is Tawakkol Karman. Tawakkol, of course, does not need an introduction to any audience. But let me just say a couple of words. You do have her bio in the summary that you have received when you entered the room. She is a journalist, human rights activist, author, and politician. But above all, she's a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, which she received in 2011. I think my favorite title, in looking at her background and seeing what has written about her, I love this description by the media of her as Iron Woman. And having watched her in her activism during Arab Spring throughout those years, I think she definitely earned that title the hard way, and we appreciate her efforts in this regard. Tawakkol has long focused on supporting women's rights, their full participation in democratic processes to ensure lasting peace in Yemen and beyond. She founded a group called Women Journalists Without Chains in order to promote freedom of expression, and she got a lot of international attention for her efforts on behalf of the media. Like many Yemenis, Karman was forced to leave her country after the Houthi takeover of Sana'a. Her home and office were raided and confiscated on December 17, 2020. Tawakkol was also selected as the first of the Foreign Policy Top 100 Global Thinkers of 2011. Tawakkol, the microphone is yours, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace be upon all of you, and good afternoon for everyone. First, I would like to welcome you and thank you all for joining us today at the press conference on democracy first in the Arab world. Talking about democracy in the Arab world, the Middle East, and North Africa is often a reason for the dictatorial regimes to mobilize all their capabilities to talk about the United States and Western conspiracy aimed at destabilizing and destroying the homeland. The irony is that these dictatorship regimes have close ties with the democratic nations like United States and West, while they commit gross violation of human rights, taking advantage of and hiding, behind these relations. It is shameful that this kind of alliance continue to exist between democratic nations and dictatorship regimes. It is shameful that this alliance continue to strike democracy. Since 2011, which is the year of Arab Spring, there has been a clear battle between the camp of democracy and human rights and the camp of anti-democracies led by Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and Iran. They have been working day and night to stop the people of our region from becoming free societies and march toward democracy. They commit all kinds of crimes against their own people, such as wars, military and militia coups, and terrorism. The dictatorships in the Arab world are using all kinds of tools of oppression against their opponents. They are now classifying Democrats and human rights advocates as terrorists and taking advantage of the lack of a just and independent judiciary system. Thousands of activists defending democracy and human rights belonging to different political and religious movements are languishing in Arab prisons and detention centers accused of supporting terrorism. So the United States, as you know, is convening Summit for Democracy on December 9 and 10, 2021, for the purpose of promoting democracy worldwide. The fact that the only one Arab state was invited affirms that, the fact that the US obviously consider the remaining Arab regimes, ranges, from autocracy to the dictatorship. So we came here to Washington, D.C. today, just before President Biden's Summit for Democracy, to convey the voice of people, of our people, for democratic regime and rule of law, and to deliberate on what can be done to promote and support democracy in the Middle East. First, United States and democratic Western nations should know that the authoritarian regimes embody the essence of corruption, instability, and the ongoing inhuman practice against their own people often lead to instability and turmoil that can extend far beyond the borders of the countries that suffer from these regimes and becomes threat to peace worldwide. So it is very important that United States of America and West to correct their policy toward the authoritarian regimes, especially in the Arab world, as it has sometimes colluded with dictators and supported the destructive project led by the capital of the capital of anti-freedom and democracy, such as Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and the military coup in Egypt. The tyrant and human rights violators must not feel unreachable by international accountability and justice. Certainly no one is calling for American or Western for intervention. The Iraqi and Afghan experience have proven that the direct intervention causes countless disasters. What Washington and the West in general should do is to stop patronizing and cuddling with dictators. The United States and West must also show a great deal of fairness toward Iran, destruction in our region, and policies that contribute to destabilizing security and stability in many countries in the region, especially in Yemen, Syria, and Iraq. There is a belief in the Arab countries that the West may tend to tolerate Iranian behavior and crimes. The Western government, they must clearly press for release of tens of thousands of political detainees in every country in the region. It will be necessary for the US and democratic government to make redoubled effort about the so-called war on terror and to not allow the dictators to use that war on terror as a tool against political opponents and against their people. They also should exert more efforts to stop violations against women and support women's effort and contribution for democracy, freedom, equality, and rule of law. Last, not least, those who ask why democracy first in the Arab world. Because we Arab people have been fighting, sacrificing for it, and we have every right to live free. Just like the Americans, the Europeans, and many peoples of the world who live as free citizens under democratic system. Because we believe that tyranny is the root of all evils, such as political and economic corruption, social backwardness, and terrorism. When freedom, democracy, rights, and the rule of law prevail, terrorism and violence disappear, and its environment and its sources dry up. This is the final word to the United States of America and the West. We, Arab people, will not give up. We will not stop our dream, struggle, and sacrifice for democracy, freedom, and rule of law until we succeed, until we achieve these noble values. War must stop in Yemen and elsewhere in the region and around the world. Sale of weapons to human rights violators, to dictators, must stop. Special relations with dictatorships in the regions and around the world must stop. Support and respect the democratic movement and wishes for our people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your great words. Next, we are going to hear the words of Ayman Noor, who is unfortunately not with us at this time, but his speech will be read by a colleague of his. Ayman, of course, is well known to the audience. He is an Egyptian politician, a former member, of course, of the Egyptian parliament, founder and chairman of Al-Ghad party, and he was the first actually candidate to compete against President Hosni Mubarak in 2005, an attempt that he was rewarded for with many years in jail and unfortunately many physical ailments as a result of the torture that he underwent at the time, which required treatment outside Egypt in subsequent years. In November 2019, he also founded the Egyptian National Action Group, a group of Egyptian expats calling to overthrow the military rule in Egypt. His word will be read by Dr. Samia Harris, a well-known Egyptian-American activist in this area, a well-known educator. Beyond that, of course, in addition to being an educator, which is a worthy endeavor in and of itself, she also is a painter and a world traveler. She is a prominent activist for democracy in Egypt and has appeared on many networks throughout the Middle East and here in the United States. She is a founding member, for those of you local here in the Washington, D.C. area, she's a founding member of the Alliance of Egyptian Americans and also of the group Democracy for Egypt. Dr. Samia, please go ahead with your reading.
Marhaba, hello. Hello. It's really an honor to share the podium with such a esteemed group. Dr. Moncef, you do us proud. Everybody else, thank you so much. So this is Dr. Ayman Noor's speech for the press conference in Washington, D.C. on December 7th, 2021. On behalf of myself and of the Liberal Ghad al-Thawra Party and the Egyptian National Alliance, I would like to thank the Arab Council for Democracy for accepting the Alliance as a main partner in the Conference for Democracy First in the Arab World, which was held with the participation of hundreds of Arab pro-democracy figures and entities from around the world on December 3rd, 2021, representing 16 Arab countries. I would like to thank Dr. Samia Harris, that would be me, who in her capacity as a member of the leadership of the party and the Egyptian National Alliance and an American-Egyptian activist for human rights, freedom, and democracy, for delivering this letter to you on my behalf. In the interest of time, I will focus on remarks on 5 questions connected to the Egyptian issue, to be addressed via the press conference to the Democracy Summit, which will convene a few hours from now with the participation of 109 Arab states and only 1 country, which is Iraq. The first address to the organizers of the summit on the 9th and 10th of December. While excluding Arab regimes that suppresses their people from attending this conference may sound reasonable, the absence of voices of this region from the summit, however, seems questionable. These people are concerned more than others with the issue of democracy, as they are paying a very high price in the course of the current struggle for democracy. For there are no reforms without reformists, and no democracy without Democrats. When will a serious and civilized dialogue begin with the reformists to reach a common understanding of ways to achieve democracy? That is a question to Mr. Biden and the people who are putting the summit together. Question number 2. Having the leaders of the countries invited to the summit of the 9th and 10th of December, have they heard the news from the leaked French documents published a few days ago about French-Egyptian cooperation under pretext of combating terrorism and the deviation from the declared goals, killing in 4 years thousands of unarmed Egyptian civilians, thousands, in the west of Egypt, with, unfortunately, US and French-made planes and weapons? When are we going to understand that our common security interest will not be achieved through investing in arms sales, but only through investing in our common humanity? This is the only straightforward way to avoid sowing hatred, violence, and terrorism in our countries. Third question, how much longer will the policies of blank checks, trading principles for interest, buying silence and time with false claims of stability, regional rules, phony reforms, and revolving door-style human rights strategies persist while progress on the ground always equals zero, absolutely nothing. Fourth question, what does the Democracy Summit on 9th and 5th and the 10th of December expect from 400 million Arabs? 400 million Arabs who are ignored if the summit's communique and the speeches of leaders attending the devoid and of explicit condemnation of what those millions are doing through, namely, unconstitutional military coup, guerrilla wars, killing and executions, detention of hundreds and thousands of innocent people. Don't these victims in their grave or prisons have the right to see their cries resonate at the summit held under the banner of democracy? Fifth question, when I was detained for 5 years after competing with President Mubarak and coming second in the presidential race in 2005, the US President George Bush, the Jr., spoke about me in his speech at the Democracy Summit in Prague in 2007. Will Al-Ahram editor-in-chief Abdel Nasser Salama, who is currently detained for an opinion article he wrote, would he hear anyone mention his name at the summit? Will the young man Ahmed Badawi, who has been in detention for holding a banner, just for holding a banner, rejecting an extension of al-Sisi presidential term, would he hear his name at the summit? Will Dr. Mohammed Mohieddin, the representative of our party, and thousands of other detainees hear any of their names mentioned by the party leaders or the parliamentarians or President Biden in the summit? In conclusion, I would like to tell you an inspiring story dedicated to President Biden, who called for the summit on the occasion of completing his first year in office. The story is 102 years old, dating from when the first revolution in modern Egyptian history erupted in 1919. Egyptians chanted two names in the street. The first was the name of the revolutionary leader, Saad Zaghloul, and the second was that of the US President, Woodrow Wilson, in appreciation of the principles he pledged to uphold his speech before Congress in January 1918. Later known as the 14 Points, addressing the importance of freedom, the right of self-determination. Yet, unfortunately, a few months after chanting for Wilson, Egyptians took to the street, chanting against him. After he agreed to make Egypt as a British protect, President Wilson didn't listen to the Egyptian leaders, following the advice of then the young American diplomat, Allen Dulles, who later headed the CIA. He based his opinion on a memo by the British Foreign Secretary at that time, Arthur Balfour. Of course, we know Balfour, in which Balfour described the leaders of the Egyptian nation as being extremely nationalistic and agents of the Turkey and the Bolshevik. The actual story may have become history, but the shock of the people who once believed promises only to see them dissipate like a mirage will never be forgotten and still alive. This is signed by Dr. Ayman Noor, the former presidential candidate in Egypt and the head of Egyptian National Alliance and the head of the party. And it's presented by Dr. Samia Harris. And if any questions, contact samiaharris.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Samia. Our next speaker is the Research Director for Saudi Arabia and the UAE at Dawn, Democracy for the Arab World Now, a sister organization that does a great job on the topic of democracy in the region here in Washington and nationally. He is a visiting adjunct professor at the Elliott School at George Washington University. Dr. Abdullah Al-Oud has published extensively on his area of specialty, Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf, and his work has appeared regularly in the media as a commentator, particularly for those of you who follow the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Foreign Policy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Abdullah Al-Oud.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khalil. I'm really honored to be next to such great speakers and politicians and activists. Thank you guys for coming to our press conference today on democracy in the Arab world. We consider it a matter of urgency to break the silence over the authoritarian regime's ongoing domestic repression and violation of international norms. In Saudi Arabia, for example, my home country, shortly after the National Day in September this year, the anniversary of the murder of Khashoggi marked 3 years, reminding us of how the Saudi nation and the people have been hijacked by not the top 1%, but the top 1%, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. As you may know, the French authorities arrested today Khalid al-Utaibi, one of the main suspects of the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, our friend, and the founder of our organization, Dawn. And we here take this chance to call on Biden to honor his commitment to support rule of law and democracy and help prosecute all killers of Khashoggi. 3 years after Jamal Khashoggi's brutal killing, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman continues to rule by the sword. From the detention of activists, feminists, intellectuals in Saudi Arabia, and the persecution of critics abroad, to the devastating 6-year-old Saudi war in Yemen, the regime keeps getting away with murder. Meanwhile, a weakened and fearful Saudi civil society remains deprived of the right to challenge repression by peaceful means, and the complicity of some of international actors has emboldened MBS, the Crown Prince. That's why we have gone public with our efforts and our declaration of principles, knowing that the regime will also target us abroad and terrorize our families at home. My family has been targeted, I have been harassed, and my friends have been threatened into silence. But we, as part of a larger Saudi community in exile and the larger Arab forces of democratic voices, vow to do everything in our power to prevent the country from and Arab countries from sliding into unrest and violence while triggering some regional wars. We believe that stability, and I echo my fellow speakers today, we believe that stability is not achieved, is only achieved through democracy and rule of law. We want to secure justice for each person without discrimination, to ensure equality among citizens, and to set up an independent, fair judiciary that refers to a constitution of a public consensus. Our efforts at Democracy for the Arab World, now Dawn, the organization founded by Khashoggi, and the National Assembly Party, NAS, the largest Saudi opposition group, are to strengthen the voices from within and support the voices of the people, not the corrupted one person who rules by intimidation and fear. The Saudi opposition and the NAS party consist of a diverse group of various regions, tribes, sects of intellectual currents The goal is to represent the Saudi people and to open our arms to all Saudi citizens, including business leaders and members of the royal family, even to work together to rescue Saudi society from the brink of collapse. We do not expect democracy to be in conflict with the Muslims in Saudi Arabia or any Muslim in the Arab world or Muslim world. Many Muslim countries have successfully transitioned toward democracy. Most urgent in Saudi Arabia is to free religion from the grip of the state, always used by the regime in domestic and foreign policy as a God-sent umbrella to cover up the worst violations of human rights and to justify state-sponsored violence and wrongdoing. With a royal power struggle looming within the House of Saud after the death of King Salman at any time in the future soon, we want to shield Saudi society, and we look for Arab countries as examples, and to shield it from political instability and unrest. As MBS is yet to become king and achieve the oath and receive the oath of allegiance from the marginalized and humiliated royalty, thus shattering the myth about royal consensus, we have one clear answer to avoid a potential leadership crisis: the people, or in Arabic, the nas. We address the power vacuum in society under MBS. The world has watched in horror the catastrophes of his and how the world has failed to stage an appropriate response. Even the Saudi aggression in Yemen is still far from being halted as the main patrons of the regime. The United States and as the main patrons of the regime, the United States and Britain did not even help to end the war properly. For us, the first concern to allow Saudis inside the country to articulate their vision to become free citizens with basic political and civil rights, and the goal is to raise awareness and provide alternative models of activism. We want to engage with the international community and global civil society to transform Saudi Arabia and the Arab world without the use of military intervention or wars into a respected participant in the international community rather than a rogue state, tolerated only for its wealth and potential as a weapon importer, destination of or a global capital or a hub for global capital investment. For a very long time, the world has tolerated dictators in order to achieve what some see as stability. However, authoritarian rogue figures such as MBS, Sisi, and other dictators in the Arab world have proven to be great sources of instability at home and abroad. It is the interest of both Saudi Arabia and the international community to support popular efforts and work with civil society groups and activists to achieve a stable democratic system that saves the country from imminent implosion from within, because the consequences will be devastating for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah, for your statement, and particularly thank you for your work on behalf of our common friend, Jamal Khashoggi, a personal friend of mine for more than 35 years, who a few months before his death, I had the honor of introducing him behind that wall there in the next room, and I know some of you were participating in that session in which he had the goal of saying, I have no problem with the reform steps that MBS is trying to implement. My problem is with the way he is going about it. And that cost him his life on October 2nd, 2018. Thank you very much. Our next is basically a summary of the conference that took place December 3rd. The resolutions that you have in your hand, and that summary will be given by our good friend Mukhtar Kamil, who is an independent political analyst in the Washington, D.C. area, spent a long, fruitful career at the IMF, participated in the founding of and served at in various capacities with several Egyptian NGOs here, particularly in the Washington area, some of which also function nationally throughout the country. That includes, of course, the American-Egyptian Alliance. Mukhtar has written numerous articles and continues to write many articles on a regular basis, given basically countless interviews on many outlets regarding political, cultural, and economic issues pertaining to Egyptian politics, to international relations in general, and to the Middle East in particular. Mr. Mukhtar, please.
Thank you very much. As Mr. Dashan told you, that I'm just simply going to read the concluding remarks of the conference. Stemming from our firm belief in the importance of democracy, the centrality of human rights, and the respect for civil liberties and political freedoms, representatives of movements, unions, and civil society organizations, as well as public and political figures, convened in the Democracy First in the Arab World virtual conference on December 3rd, 2021, followed by a press conference on December 7 at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., and made this declaration, which embodies the essence of the epistemological, moral, and political imperatives of the vast majority of populations in the Middle East and North Africa. The United States is convening a White House conference on December 9 and 10, 2021, for the purpose of promoting democracy worldwide. The fact that only one Arab state was invited affirms that the US considers the remaining Arab regimes autocracies or dictatorships. In this statement, we reiterate our firm commitment to democratic principles in politics and governance, as well as to peaceful transition to democracy across the MENA region. We also denounce any attempt by autocratic regimes and non-democratic forces, regrettably oftentimes supported by international powers, to thwart the legitimate aspirations of our people for real democratic and representative governance. The phenomena of the Arab uprisings that swept the region in 2011 was regarded as the embodiment of the collective will for profound change across the region. But the forces of the old order, which largely monopolized the key instruments of power in society, including control of the military, police, security agencies, the judiciary, wealth, and flow of information, represented the major obstacles to a smooth democratic transition or any meaningful and durable reforms. As the dynamics of the conflict between the establishment of the old corrupt order and the nascent popular forces for democracy and reforms have played out, it became evident that major challenges facing the states and peoples, as well as political and social movements in the region, have emerged. How to deal with these challenges will ultimately determine the future prospects of the region, either in the direction of increasingly inclusive democratic societies and transparent political systems, or towards a more dysfunctional and repressive political order resulting in endemic conflict, chaos, divisions, displacements, and forced migrations that would eventually lead to non-functioning or failed states. Such contrasting outcomes would certainly have a profound and direct impact on the national security and economic interests, not only of the United States, but also the rest of the world. The people of the region confront difficult challenges in their quest for stability, peace, and harmony, including questions of political legitimacy, democratization, constitutional government, the rule of law, civil-military relations, independent judiciary, transparent and good governance, human rights, social justice, sustained economic development, equality, pluralism, minority rights, and national independence. Since the popular uprisings of the Arab Spring, most powerful and anti-democratic actors on the local, regional, and international levels have played a disruptive role in rolling back the people's pursuit toward freedom, democratic transition, rules-based society, social justice, and good governance. These disruptions have included military coups in Egypt and the Sudan, devastating wars in Syria, militia coup and aggressive war in Yemen, rising warlords and chaos in Libya, a palace coup in Tunisia, and crackdowns on many democratic movements across the region, including the peaceful Hirak in Algeria, all of which facilitated an environment for destructive ideologies and the emergence of terrorist movements in Syria, Iraq, and elsewhere. In the midst of these setbacks, many Western governments that espouse democracy around the world have either aided and abetted those attempts to frustrate the people's march towards democracy in the region, or have kept silent. Therefore, any call to strengthen democracy across the world that does not address these reversals or acts genuinely to advance the cause of democracy across the MENA region rings hollow. It has been evidently clear that dictators, autocratic regimes, and warlords cannot advance their dark agenda for the region without the active or tacit support of Western governments and leaders. We, the representatives of numerous political parties and social movements in the MENA region, believe that there should be no inherent conflict or inevitable confrontation between the legitimate interests of democratic governments on one hand and our people's genuine aspirations, interests, and right to live in freedom and dignity on the other hand. We represent democratic and popular socio-political movements. Whatever grievances, misperceptions, or mistrust that might exist between our peoples and the West or those who represent democratic systems must be dealt with through dialogue, non-coercive negotiations, cooperation, mutual respect, and basically reciprocity. We call on all democratic governments participating in this conference to strongly and firmly declare their support for genuine democracy across the MENA region, grounded in the highest values and ideals recognized in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as based on the following principles. 1. Declaration of unequivocal condemnation and sanctions of any regimes or forces in the MENA region that disrupt or assist in disrupting democratic change or constitutional orders, support military coups or civil wars, or promote the overthrow of democratically elected governments. 2. Reassessment of any nation's relations with any regimes that violate or engage in serious abuses of human rights or engage in political oppression. 3. Calling for the immediate release of all political prisoners across the region without any delay, a moratorium on all unjust death sentences, and the end of all political trials and persecutions. 4. Calling on the Human Rights Council of the United Nations and the General Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court to investigate and prosecute any and all regimes that engage in gross violations of human rights in the MENA region, as well as to publish their findings and recommendations. 5. Declaring that freedom is a foundation of human dignity that must be granted to all people, as well as affirming the respect for civil liberties, political freedoms, and human rights to all people across the MENA region, regardless of religious affiliations, race, gender, class, or socioeconomic status. 6, support the promotion of the culture of democracy, including citizen equality and participation, pluralism, political tolerance, empowerment of women and the disenfranchised, and free and responsible media. 7, supporting the formation of a political system that is based on representative government, transparency, accountability, and good governance. 8, promoting and supporting the application of equal justice under the rule of law through the creation of an independent judiciary and Bill of Rights. 9, establishing a fair economic system based on social justice, human and ecological security, sustained development, decent education, social services, equal opportunity, and access to national resources for all citizens. 10, and final, acknowledging the problems of internal human displacement, the emergence of criminal syndicates, and human trafficking as a consequence of decades of political tyranny, injustice, and human rights violations in autocratic states. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mukhtar. It's a very solid statement. In my 40-plus years of experience in dealing with Arab democracy and human rights, I think it's probably one, if not the most solid statement ever articulated by an Arab group over the years, and specifically addressed to the American government. I hope that the conferences taking place, the summits, the 2 summits taking place Thursday and Friday, somehow will receive that text and give some attention to it, if indeed they want to have some credibility among the 400 and whatever, 30 or 40 million Arabs in this world who are frustrated with Western policies and lip service given to this issue throughout the Arab world. As we transition to the Q&A, I'm told that we have a short video, a 1-minute video to be shown. If you would like to play that video at this time on the screen, if you could give it your attention, and then we will quickly resume the Q&A. The speakers can remain seated during the Q&A if you desire to do so. Go ahead.
تونس الديمقراطية أولاً.
من سوريا الديمقراطية أولاً.
من فلسطين الديمقراطية أولاً.
من الجزائر الديمقراطية أولاً.
من تونس الديمقراطية أولاً.
من العراق الديمقراطية أولاً.
من مدينة اسطنبول الديمقراطية أولاً.
من غزة الديمقراطية أولاً.
من الأردن الديمقراطية أولاً.
من اليمن الديمقراطية أولاً.
من واشنطن الديمقراطية أولاً. Okay, the floor is yours now. Let's go ahead, raise your hand. I'll acknowledge you. Please make it short and sweet so we can make good use of our 30 minutes or so together. No statements per se. If you specifically like to address your question to a specific person, go ahead and do that. Yes, sir. Hold on for the microphone, please. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So my question is addressed to Dr. Abdullah Ouda. It's actually related to today's development about the arrest of a Saudi national in France who is allegedly involved in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi and a member of the Tiger Squad. And the Saudi response, this is a mistaken identity. So do you have any confirmation about this case, if this is actually the guy in the Interpol warrant, and how this incident may affect the current attempts of rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Turkey? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. Well, first of all, here are a few questions about the incident itself. How this guy, if he is the right guy, and we think he is the right guy, was able to enter France in the first place. So let's remember, like, they arrested him in his way out, trying to fly back to Saudi Arabia. So he was able to enter the country and travel around, and then in his way back, they arrested him. So this is the first question. Second, this is also why was he given a visa? Why was he allowed to go from one airport to another? And then to the Saudi response, when they said it's a mistaken identity, well, let's remember the Saudi authorities said, and Mohammed bin Salman himself said, Khashoggi left the consulate after 20 minutes of entering the consulate. And then they tried to cover up with another narrative, and then a third false narrative, a fourth false narrative. So they continued with all these false narratives. So how would we believe such a regime in trying to cover up their own crime, and also to trying to shield, they were trying all their best to shield the higher up officials who were either exonerated or not even put into trial, like Saud al-Qahtani, Ahmed al-Asiri, and more importantly, Mohammed bin Salman himself, whom being identified by the ODNI report as the one who ordered the killing and murder of Jamal Khashoggi.
Thank you, Abdullah. Please, if you don't mind, I'll recognize you if you raise your hand and identify yourself and your affiliation for the benefit of our panelists here. Abdurrahim.
Abdurrahim Fuqara from Jazeera. A question for Tawakkul. Dr. Marzouki, in his opening statement, referenced the January the 6th events, 2020 here, a stone's throw from here. And I wanted to ask you what your reading is of the future of democracy in the West, and based on that, what your reading is of the future of democracy in the Arab world. And a quick one for Dr. Marzouki, if I may. It is said that since the Biden administration came into power with its democracy agenda, it is said that 6 coups have happened in Africa. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
We are at the National Press Club. Notice the sign of a good journalist always has a follow-up. 2 questions in one. All right, double whammy. Go ahead.
Okay, I will start with what I think about the future of democracy in Arab region. Absolutely, I am so optimistic in the future. I believe that those people who revolt against tyranny and without any fears from the consequences, and who is still revolting, still sacrificing their life, they will not give up. So we decided to reach to democracy, to freedom, and rule of law. And people, as I said in my speech, that we will not give up, and this is the destiny that we decided that we will reach. Either we will see it today, or our kids, the next generation, will see it one day. And we know what is the destiny of every great revolution, that they have the same challenges, the same obstacles. In all the history, every great revolution had the same challenges and consequences that we are facing now. So the destiny with people in Arab region is with democracy. Now, what is about the future of democracy in the West? Here, I have some hesitation about that. So I think there is a threat, toward West democracy. And we see now how the rise of the right wings in the West, and how the hatred is sometimes increasing, in Western countries, and how these countries, the Western countries, they abandon their values towards supporting democracy, supporting human rights, and that will cost them a lot inside their countries with their democracy, and also and the same thing, with the issues that that attack the global peace. So as a result of their alliance with the dictator, we are seeing all this chaos around the world. We see all this threatened, against, global peace. We see also the increasing of terrorism, and also the increasing the amount of immigrants and refugees that came to them. So it's very important that those Western countries, they should repeat, they should يعيدوا حساباتهم. They should think again.
Reconsider, yeah.
Yeah, they rethink about their policies, not just for our countries. It's for their countries and for their democracy and for their values.
Well, in my experience as a human rights activist, as political opponent, as head of states for 3 years, and now as, once again, political opponent, my impression is that the Western government, they have to choose, because they are talking all the time about, disseminating democracy in the world, etc., etc. On the other hand, supporting dictatorship. So now they have to choose. They have to stop. They cannot, on one hand, talking about promoting democracy, and on the other hand, promoting, in fact, dictatorship. They have to choose. They can't do both. I mean, nobody in the Arab world is believing, the Western government. There's a problem of deep mistrust about the whole discourse of promoting democracy all over the world. So, I wouldn't say my hope is that whether they stop talking about promoting democracy, or they stop defending and making business with a dictatorship. But once again, they can't do both, because there is a lack of credibility all over the world about Western governments and the US government. I'm sorry to say that. But once again, it's time for them to choose between their long interest, their interest in the long run, their ideals, or business as usual with dictatorship like the Emirates or the Saudi or the Egyptian regime. It's their problem. It's not our problem. It's their problem now to choose to say. Once again, they can no longer go the same way of dealing. My opinion is that the main problem of this government, of the Western government, is in fact they are promoting the Chinese model. They're not promoting the American model, because in fact when they gave all the support to the dictatorship like the Emirates or the Saudi, in fact they are promoting the Chinese model, the mix between dictatorship and capitalism. So it's very frustrating for me. It's model for me to see that democratic system, the democratic states are in fact promoting the model they are fighting against. In fact, so I hope that they will make the good choice, but I'm not sure. This is why I think that it's our duty, to fight for our own democracy and rely only on ourselves. If we rely on Western government, I am afraid that we will be once again frustrated and deceived. So we have to rely on ourselves and nothing else.
Can I comment as an American citizen as well? I think, if it's all right, I think our experience this year, January 6th, here with an attack on the capital, on our capital, should really, really resonate and should teach us a huge lesson that democracy does not stop on the borders and it does not protect the inside. And there is no border for democracy. There's no limit for democracy. There's no freedom for democracy. Therefore, there's no such a thing as, well, we are not going to mind the outside world, outside of America, as long as we have democracy here. the experience of January 6th in here with the attack on the Capitol should shake everybody who is a believer in our freedom and our democracy. That democracy in America is only 200 and some years old. It is not something that should be taken for granted. It is something that we have to defend. We have to protect. It's when they gave us a republic, it's a republic that we have to take care of and we have to know how to defend it. And defending it does not come through walls, it comes through the rest of the world. That democracy is good for Egypt just like it's good for America. It's good for the Yemenis just like it's good for Canada. It's good for Europe just like it's good for Africa. So democracy means democracy in the same place, not just for our Western world, not just for America. There's no such a thing as a different democracy or stability for the Arab world. Let them deal with themselves as long as we have our, it doesn't work. And this year's experience with our election should teach us that. America is on peril. Our democracy is in peril in America. And unless we respect it, unless we defend it via the world, it's not going to last. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. Munji? Sorry, go ahead, and then you can pass it on. I meant he was there first. Go ahead.
Yeah, freedom and human rights are connected in the world, in the whole world. And so we are affected, humanity is affected since the occupation of Africa, and the Arab world is still there. So you cannot talk about freedom and democracy and relate to these dictators who are appointed out from outside their countries. They are not appointed by their people, and they are not dealing, and they don't have their own power to say something or do something unless if they ask outside power who are appointed them in the Arab world. All of them are appointed. So we know the Saudis leaders are appointed also. The Arab world and every Arab people know that. So it's not, how can you ask about democracy from here or there, and you know, go to the real problems. And the real problems is to all of us here in America and Britain and also France, who are holding the United Nations right now, and sometimes they want to solve our problems. They are not solving our problems; they make problems.
Okay.
Second, the African American here also the African Americans, because of these problems and the white man want to stay in power. That's what happened in the White House last January. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there is a question somewhere in the middle of this comment, but thank you very much for expressing your perspective. Munji.
Thank you. Munji Dawadi, the Executive Director of the Libyan American Alliance and the President of the Tunisian United Network. So I kind of wear two hats. My question is to the leadership. First of all, congratulations on holding your conference on December 3rd and for holding this event today. Where do you plan to go from here? These are, like Dr. Jahshan said, this is a solid statement with very solid demands and maybe recommendations. How are you planning to take this forward? While you're here and you are esteemed leadership of this conference and this work, are you planning on meeting with officials in DC and delivering this message and these recommendations straight to them? Are you planning on maybe building coalitions with many of the organizations that I see around so they can carry this work forward while you visit every now and then? Thank you.
Well, this is the first step. As you know, we have had this first meeting on December 3rd. Now we are planning, as I told you, we are planning to have an Arab network. And I think when this Arab network, probably in the next few months, we are working on it, I hope this network would be a solid one. And then when we will have this network, sure that we would like to have a connection here in Washington and talk about our American friends. But we have to be very, very careful, once more, because in our countries, it's not well accepted, that you go, talking about your own domestic problem with foreigners, especially when they are from the United States, where, because the reputation of that the United States, besides always with Israel, they are always with the dictatorship. This is the image that we have in our countries about the United States. I hope this image would change with President Biden. I hope that surely that after this building this network, we would like to have a good connection, good relationship, but as as a dialogue, we are not clients. We do not intend to be clients of any government or any country. Once again, I do know that if we want to succeed in promoting democracy, we must rely on ourselves, never rely on outside forces, because our experience, historical experience, has shown that it's always counterproductive. So if we want to discuss, it's equal to equal, to discuss about promote democracy all over the world, in our region mainly. But once again, we must rely on ourselves, have discussion with American human rights activists, or even with the official from the United States, because we do believe that as Dr. Harris said, that democracy here in the United States maybe I would say that it depends on what's happened in the Arab world, but why not? Because I think we are interrelated, we are linked together. So if democracy is overthrown in part of the world, it can be a danger here for the United States. And well, this is for the moment what I can answer you, but I hope that we will go and discuss more and more those difficult and complex questions.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to second basically the importance of Munji's question here and the importance of an initiative like yours is in the follow-up. And frankly, what you had, this phase one, although it has had its challenges and difficulty, it's really the easy part. The follow-up is the real difficult part. And I would like to finish the quote you started with in your remarks, where the State Department is following up on Biden's quote regarding democracy. And it said in its paper on the summit this week, it said that for the United States, the summit will offer an opportunity to listen, learn, and engage with a diverse range of actors whose support and commitment is critical for global democratic renewal. Take them for their word. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you very much for the outstanding conference. And actually, the gentleman asked the question that I wanted to ask, but I have a follow-up. Specifically, we have two distinguished speakers today, former head of state and Nobel Prize laureate. And I'd like to see in terms of what's next, where do we go from here? Is there a coalition, for instance, former heads of state or Nobel Prize laureates that can recognize what is going on with authoritarianism, which is an existential problem? It's not only for a single country, but for so many countries. So I would like to ask, from your perspective, former heads of state coalition, Nobel Prize laureate coalition to help with this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I want to, I want to tell you that don't worry, because when we decided to make this effort, it's since 2013 when we met with Dr. Moncef Marzouki and Dr. Ayman Noor, and we decided to establish the Arabic Council for supporting revolution at that time, and now we changed the name now Arabic Council for Democracy. So it is a long, activities, a long work. We have a lot of, activities inside, our, council, and this is one of the outcomes of, our efforts as Arab Council for Democracy. And I think we, as human rights activists and oppositions outside, our countries and also inside our countries, we decided to continue the effort of Arab Spring. So what next? Next is that this Arab Spring shouldn't die. The Arab Spring should continue, and we as people should be the voice of those people in the land sacrifice their lives for freedom and democracy. And when we came here, it's just for one mission. Well, for today, one mission is to convey message to Biden administration and to the democratic governments. Now they will meet after 2 days to stop supporting dictators in our region, to stop supporting counter-revolutions in our regions. This is the most, if they stop their supporting, their alliance with them, you will see how we people in the land, in the ground, will prevail on reaching to democracy. So the most difficult obstacle that we face now is their alliance and their complicity with dictators. Not because we are weak, no. We are in all Arab countries. In Tunisia, in Egypt, in Sudan, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya, in all these countries. People are, and this is why you see that the bloodshed didn't stop until now, because people in the land didn't give up. And the lesson that was, that the counter-revolutions, Saudi, Emirates, and Iran wanted to export it to our people to stop their demands for change, didn't reach to our people. There was another lesson, which, be announced in the second wave of our revolution in Sudan and Algeria. And as Dr. Moncef Marzouki, he said, the third wave will come. So we are kept as a very strong, freedom fighters, telling them you are the only one who is building walls in front of us as a nations to reach democracy. So if you want your summit to be a successful summit, you should now stop your alliance with the dictators. This is the most important message, and the other is just details.
Last but not least, Nihad, would you like to conclude with somebody else had? Yeah, microphone. There you go.
Executive Director of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations in Washington, D.C. As some of you know, I represent, or I have been working in the defense of rights of American Muslims, but also engaging the U.S. government and Congress over the years. So the question to the esteemed panelists, because since they represent civil society in the Arab world, and really the true reflection of the Arab people. I heard from your statement that definitely you recognize that change comes from the Arab world. It should not come from the outside. But also you recognize that the United States and other Western governments are guilty of supporting autocratic regimes and dictatorships, and also the Israeli occupation. How far are you, in your planning to engage those who are really part of the problem here, which is the Congress and the United States government? I believe it is effective for you not to speak to the media only, but to speak to the public and pressing those who are making those policies, who are making the lives of the Arab world difficult. Therefore, are you planning to meet with at least the Bureau of Democracy and Human Rights at the State Department, which always gives recommendations to the United States government to condition economic and military aid when human rights are abused for those who are recipient of US aid? The least is for you to engage those people, and also those who are holding our government responsible and accountable, which is Congress. If you have reservations in meeting with Biden officials, which I believe they will be happy to meet with you, we believe it is important at least to meet with the policymakers who hold this government accountable. So are you planning to do it during this visit?
Okay, so first of all, we are, as you know, forces from within, Egyptian, Saudi, Egyptian, Yemeni, Tunisian, Palestinian, from the Arab world, who probably represent diverse group of people who come from within. We reflect on the aspirations to freedom, democracy in the Arab world, but also this means we can engage with anyone who is involved in the Arab world, those who have military bases, who have supported dictators, those who have established relationships for decades with these governments. So I think to your question, yes, absolutely, this is essentially important to engage with them, to let them know that for example, the Arab world is not the Arab dictators, but the Arab people. It's about human rights, democracy. It's not about the top corrupted elite who corrupted our society and have sold to you the narrative that they represent the people, but they never did, because they are never elected. They are never part of a democratic system that is more transparent and adopts a rule of law. So yes, it is important to engage with the people of Washington, to meet with the State Department in order to let them know and to pressure them to stop arming dictators who use these arms to kill us, to kill our people, to wipe out even tribes, cities, like they did in many parts of the Arab world, including Yemen, Libya, and even Saudi Arabia. Al-Huwaitat tribe have been completely displaced by this dictator in Saudi Arabia who has been supported by the US. And just like a $650 million worth of sale is being approved by the Biden administration, which is why it is still essentially important to engage with them and to let them know it is, I mean, if you want to protect your strategic interest, the future of your even relationship to this region, it's not to engage with these dictators, but rather with the civil society institutions to respect the will of the people and the rule of law in these countries.
For us being, for instance, Egyptian in the area, Egyptian American, we are in regular communique. يعني لو فتحت لك my phone, there's a regular communique with the State Department, with Secretary Blinken, and with the senators who do represent us, as well as the Congress. We have small wins, like when we focus that don't put President Biden in the same photo as Al-Sisi, because then he will get credibility. These are small wins. What we want is much bigger. Take your hands off our countries, and we will be doing much better. I'm reminded of the Supreme Court Justice when she said, take your boots off our neck, and we will do better. It's the same thing. Just stop supporting the tyrants with the excuse that we are buying stability. No, you're not buying stability. You are buying hatred towards America and the West, because it's going to build up and keeps building up. So we are in communication, but we would like for it to be a much bigger. I'm sure Mukhtar can do
just
more.
have very few brief points. I'm really kind of, I like the suggestions that, but the brief points are as follows. Number one, if we are gonna be in contact with decision makers or otherwise guys in the United States, it has to be continual. I mean, I have seen all over the years a lot of efforts to do that, but the continuation element, which is essential, was not really available. That should be taken note of. Number two, it has to be connected with an act of mobilization, meaning that it is not sufficient that a group of Egyptians or Yemeni or even a group of various Arab countries would go to the State Department and meet some official, and they will be very polite and listen to you, and they have their assistants write notes. But if you don't continue doing that on sustainable basis, that would be almost like wasted time. Once we were in the office of one congressman, and people were complaining about something about Israel, and they didn't want the American administration to do it, so he said, pressure us. Pressure us, which is in our Arabic culture, it sounds a little bit weird, that, oh, some guy is asking you to pressure you. We need to do that. How do we pressure them? Telephone calls, messages, mail, and so on.
Practicing democracy.
Practicing democracy. The last point that I would like to mention, and I'll stop, is yes, we also have to make allowance and plan for a possible backlash from the Arabic-speaking public opinion. Our peoples, or at least considerable segments of our public opinion, Arabic-speaking people, are programmed that the United States is a big Satan and the support for Israel, which is partly true. Yes, the United States supports Israel, but that doesn't mean that because the United States supports Israel, I am committing an act of moral suicide by just prohibiting contact with the United States. I'm giving more opportunity to Israel by doing that. That's all what I want to say, and thank you.
I would like to again endorse what my friends in the audience have suggested in terms of the follow-up. Based on my many years previous incarnation as a lobbyist, I'll tell you what could make your job easy, because it looks difficult now, because you are a newly kind of created effort or initiative at this time. The US at this stage in its history is conflicted, and this administration is doubly more conflicted than it lets or it admits. It's conflicted between stability and serving its own interests quietly in the region, and between its support for democracy and commitment for what it advocated during the campaign. Your job is to make him pick the right choice. I think Abdullah mentioned that this administration is seeking right now, when the relationship he referred to, the reason it's cementing those relationships, because it feels it's getting stability and it's getting its interests served. But frankly, it's getting the short end of the stick. It's getting short-term stability. Long-term stability is alliance with Arab Democrats. It's alliance with the Arab people. And I would make that the theme of your follow-up for your next visits and so on. Any final question? Yes, I see a hand back there in the dark. I'm sorry, the light is shining in my face. Three would be a bit, together would be a little hard to answer, but go ahead, one at a time, please.
question for you. First, I would like to thank you for your efforts. It's very reassuring to see our people working for what's rightfully ours. However, if we're being frank, we know that the US policy and foreign policy and politics have been driven by financial gains and profits since World War II, when they discovered how profitable war is. How do you see the US government responding to your efforts and prioritizing the people and their human rights over their financial gains? Thank you.
Okay, we will repeat some points, but I will not repeat. I will say something new, that we want Biden administration to fulfill their promises to their nation and to all people around the world. Biden, in his election campaigns, he promised that he will ally with the freedom fighters, with the democracy around the world. So until now, Biden did not do enough to fulfill his promises. We see that there is something opposite, especially when he's now, I think, he has some weapons deal with Saudi Arabia, for example, and et cetera, et cetera. So we are waiting. So when we call them, we make a lot of effort. We have also our responsibility to wake them up. So as we make a great revolutions against the dictators, now we have a very great effort, and duties to warn them, and that they are committing a very big mistakes. So again, as I said before, we will not give up in our battle for freedom and democracy in front of all kinds of violence, from the dictatorship and the counter-revolution. And at the same time, we will not give up on our efforts to convince the Western governments, started with the United States, to commit to their values. So we are waiting for for that. Can we have a question from Murad?
Yes.
Mukhtar, yeah.
I want to answer in very few points. Well, to answer your question, it's a zigzagging effort. I mean, we're not going to go and meet with few people and then achieve results. As I said before, we need continuity. That's number one. Number two, we should not neglect interests of countries. I mean, the United States is a superpower. It has one of the best constitutions in the world, but when principles are in contradiction with interest, of course, the United States and any other country will go for interest. So we cannot just simply expect other countries to go for their principles at the expense of their interests. And here is the issue, which Mr. Dashan has indicated, the trade-off between short-term and long-term interests of the United States. We have been advocating since the 80s the same theme with the Americans, long-term, long-term, long-term. But the American democracy is designed in such a way as to make politicians think short-term. We should take that into consideration. Finally, we as opposition and pro-democracy forces in the MENA region, quite frankly, and I hope nobody would take that against me, we have to be more convincing that we really are pro-democracy. We have to exercise among ourselves democratic practices so that other people would be really convinced that we mean what we say. Finally, the United States or any other European or Western country would like to see where is the alternative. If we go against Sisi in Egypt, for instance, or against bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, what do? I mean, that's a lot of energy, guys, for a country like the United States. The United States wants to face China, face Russia, da-da-da. But, I mean, for all this energy that the United States would expend in order to change a Sisi or not to support them, don't forget that these guys, they bribe American corporations and Western corporations. You have a lot, billions and billions of dollars under the name of weapons deals or whatever it is, but they are briberies. So in order to go through that, who else and where, what is the alternative? These are all issues that I believe if the opposition trends, forces, groups get to use discussing these things together, maybe we can achieve some progress in the future. Thank you very much for a valuable question.
Thank you. We have a hand up here for a while. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Excuse me, can you raise it?
Yeah, and the microphone directly. No, hold it directly in front of your mouth.
It was off. Have you received any response from Biden administration regarding the outcomes of Democracy First conference? And if the answer is no, as I expect, ignoring the democratic civil society in the Arab world by this administration, how can be explained? Thank you.
Well, I can tell you that we didn't have any invitation, of course. But nevertheless, we thought that we should come and talk about our grievances and about our hopes. And we hope that our voices would be listened to. But we didn't have any invitation. We didn't expect, in fact, to be invited, and we didn't want to interfere with this. Now, why with the civil society, the Arab civil society, which is so strong, I told you that, in fact, the Arab people are fighting for democracy for more than 50 years, and then it's the real battlefield of democracy in the world. Why the civil society is completely absent? This is not, I don't know. You have to ask the Biden administration. But once again, we come here to say that there is a battle, an important battle for human rights and democracy in the Arab world, that we are doing our best, to promote those values, supposed to be Western values, but I think that they are international human values, are no more just Western values. That we just want you to stop, giving your support to countries like the Emirates. For instance, this country, the Emirates, is behind all the counter-revolution in the world. And we do know that this country is a client of the United States. So just tell your clients to stop, harming us, because everywhere we will go, we will have this state behind the scene, damaging all our democratic process. But we also come here to say that we were not expecting you to intervene in your internal affairs. We are doing the job. It's our main responsibility. It's our duty. It's our. But the only thing that we want you to do is, once again, to say to your client to stop, destroying the process. And of course, we would like to have discussion with the policymaker here in the States later on, when our network is well established. Then we can probably come back and talk. But once again, not as a client, but as a partner to promote democracy in the world. This is our position.
I want to add something. That there is some Arabic civil society, is invited in the Biden conference. So there is not that, that they neglecting, the, Arabic, NGOs, for democracy. But for us, it's if we didn't be invited and our voice is not that, loud inside the conference, it's for us, it's better to have the parallel conference, even if they invited us. So what we are doing now is something very strong, and I am sure that it will reach to them. And yes, I have a connection with the Foreign Affairs Ministry. I called them to come to listen. I don't know if they sent someone from the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and I think maybe. So just to know what is the voices of people. So even if they didn't hear to us, we are in the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. If they didn't hear to us, even if we didn't communicate. So that means that they are really in a very direct and deep complicity, with dictatorship. And they don't want at all to listen to us. But I don't think that. I don't think. So we are here. We are in the National Press Club in D.C. We convey the media will help us, the NGOs will help us, and I hope they send someone as the Foreign Affairs Ministry to see our declaration. We will send the declaration to networks, to 100,000 networks inside America and outside America, and our voices will not be limited. So we will try to open all the doors to support the people inside our country to reach to the democracy and freedom.
Mr. Biden has left the impression that he would like some kind of a friendly divorce with the Arab world, but as you see, the Arab world is not going to give him that pleasure. I'm sorry we're out of time. They are indicating that they have reached the limit here.
Yes.
But those of you who still have a couple of questions, please feel free to come over here and ask your question as we end the conference at this time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Finished? Okay, thank you.
But there's only one person who has it.